What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the shelf, and today I thought it would be fun to try something that I've never done before, which is provide you guys with my picks for 10 movies that I would recommend that you buy from Criterion. Right now, the 50% off sale for Criterion is going on at Barnes & Noble, and if you're anyone who's plugged into the physical media space, you know that this is pretty much the time to buy them. Nobody really buys them at full price. If you buy Criterion at full price, what are you doing? There's zero reason to do that. So yeah, these are my 10 recommendations that I have picked from my collection. It's a modest collection. I think I might have like 60 or 70 Criterion. I'm not actually sure. So yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. All right, first up, we got The Night of the Hunter. This is a horror thriller film from the year 1955, directed by Charles Laughton, and it stars Robert Mitchum. Now, this is the only movie that Charles Laughton ever directed. It's a sort of horror thriller, like I said, following this guy who's posing as a preacher in an attempt to get close to this family and learn the location of a large sum of money that was hidden by his former cellmate. So the two children of his former cellmate are having to hide the money from him, and it's got this sort of children in peril motif going on that I really like. The movie is beautiful to look at. It's got this German expressionism influence going on, uses a lot of harsh angles and some surrealist imagery that sort of makes sense from the viewpoint of a child. Yeah, and it's just a riveting film. If you're anything like me, movies from this era can be hit or miss because a lot of them, in my opinion, can just be very boring and very talky and just not enough for me to really sink my teeth into. This movie is not the case. Similar to another movie kind of from around this era that I'll talk about later on in the list. But if you've seen Night of the Hunter, then you probably know what I'm talking about. It's really just, it kind of starts and it really doesn't let up for the entire runtime. So I would definitely recommend The Night of the Hunter. All right, next up on my list of recommendations, we have the 4K Criterion of Night of the Living Dead. Obviously, this is a movie that I don't really need to tell you very much about. This one's kind of self-explanatory. I think the best thing I can say about the 4K release from Criterion is that it's sort of just the definitive release. And even if you have the Blu-ray of this, before the 4K came out, still pretty comprehensive, great picture quality, a lot of the same special features, if not the same special features. I haven't really done like a compare and contrast here, but if you're looking for the definitive release and you somehow don't own it already, definitely get Night of the Living Dead on 4K. It's sort of an immortal classic at this point, but yeah, for me, this is just, I got nothing to add. It's Night of the Living Dead, you already know. All right, next up on the list, I have the 4K of After Hours from Martin Scorsese. This movie stars Griffin Dunne, and it is one of my favorite movies that I've ever seen. It is such an underrated banger from Scorsese. Similar to movies like Color of Money, maybe even King of Comedy, there's this kind of era of Scorsese where the dude's hit rate is just already so insane that like even his, good movies get overshadowed by all of the great, amazing ones. And I think this is definitely an example of that. This movie is like a surreal fever dream of an experience. It is just so chaotic and, shares a lot of the same DNA as a movie like Good Time from the Safdie brothers. It is just this guy's sort of descent into the surreal underbelly of New York, and he's just trying to get home at a certain point and seeing all the trials and tribulations that he goes through just trying to get home. This is just a movie unlike anything really I've seen before, with maybe the exception of Good Time, but like the way that it also is channeling this 80s influence, obviously that's when it was filmed, it kind of makes it feel even grittier. It's like there's something about 80s New York that is just so tangible. I feel like I can reach out and like feel it, But yeah, definitely would recommend this one. It is a wild time. All right, next up I have 12 Angry Men. This is Sidney Lumet, I believe. Yeah, Sidney Lumet. Lumet? Not sure. Anyway, like I was saying earlier with Night of the Hunter, this movie's from 1957. It's literally 12 angry men in a room talking for the entire film. And it is insane just how on the edge of my seat I can be for a movie like that. Just the way the script is structured, the dialogue, the way that they continue to kind of break these bombshells in the case that they're trying to discuss. It's essentially it's a panel of jurors essentially, and they're trying to decide if this man is guilty or not. And it's like 11-1 split, and then it kind of becomes 2-10, and so on and so forth until eventually you're not really sure what to believe. And just these characters are all so fully realized, and they all get an equal amount of time to shine and kind of express their viewpoint, and the way that they all kind of mash into each other, and you know, the arguments that they have, it's timeless in a way. It's like this movie, I think it has been remade, but there's something so classic about it, and it almost feels like a bit like a stage play as well, just with how dialogue heavy it is. But it is no less enthralling for the time nor the setting or anything like that. It is such a classic movie. If you've heard about this for a while and been wanting to finally check it out, there's no better time than now to get it. And yeah, I would highly recommend 12 Angry Men. All right, next up, I got Smooth Talk. This one stars Laura Dern and Treat Williams. I believe it's directed by Joyce Chopra. Yeah, Joyce Chopra. This one was recommended to me by a buddy of mine, Tim, over at Tim Talks Talkies, although I think his channel name is now just Tim, is just his name. So anyway, shout out Tim. He recommended this one to me, and this is such an interesting movie to talk about because it came out in 1985, and if you think about 1985 sort of like teenager coming of age movies, you think of like the John Williams stuff, you know, Breakfast Club, and this is sort of along those same lines, but like way darker and like tackling subject matter that not really many movies at all were tackling around this time. You know, they would get into some heavy topics, but this gets really heavy. And don't let the cover deceive you. It is not all like sunshine and rainbows with this movie. It's, you know, and I also don't want to oversell it because a lot of what happens is, you know, it's not explicit or anything, and it's not directly like shown on screen. I'm trying to be very careful with my words here because I don't want to perhaps sell a different idea of what happens in this movie, but just know that it's a little different than what you're probably used to from coming of age teenager stories from around this time. And it's stuck with me. It stays with you. It's really interesting, and it's got some special features on here where the writer, the director, and Laura Dern all kind of talk about the movie, and they're all women, so it gives you this very unique perspective given, you know, the subject matter of the movie and everything. So makes for a really interesting watch after the film is over. So this is one that I'm overdue for a rewatch on myself, so I might be doing that here sometime soon. So yeah, definitely check out Smooth Talk if any of that sounds interesting to you. All right, next up, I got Paris, Texas. This one is directed by Wim Wenders. I think that's how you say his name, and it stars Harry Dean Stanton. My first time watching this movie was such a special experience because the way that this thing unfolds, it's like a mystery. You really don't know what's going on. You don't know who the main character is, how he got in the situation that he got into, and, you know, all of these, you have so many questions. And so the way that the movie unfolds is so enthralling because you actually care. The movie does a great job of making you care about finding the answer. And it's just such an interesting character study about these people and what ultimately is a situation that many people may be able to relate to. And even if you can't, then you'll still be able to relate to the just raw humanity and emotion in this movie. And it's so beautiful. It's a beautiful movie to look at cinematography wise, as well as just the themes and everything going on in it. All of that to say, you really just kind of have to watch this to understand what I mean. One of my favorite movies that I've ever just kind of blind bought is this one right here. Had heard a lot about it for so long and then finally watched it, not really knowing anything about it, mind you, which is a really good way to go into it. So hopefully I didn't even say too much myself. I try to really be careful in how I explain things with these movies as well. Obviously, if you're going to buy them, I don't want to tell you too much about them if you don't already have them. So Paris, Texas, check it out. All right, we got another horror movie here. We got The Others, starring Nicole Kidman, directed by Alejandro Amenabar. I think that's how you say his name. This is the 4K, and this is such a great horror film. It is from 2001, I think. Yeah, 2001, which is not a decade of horror that I particularly love. I find that a lot of movies from the 90s and 2000s haven't aged terribly well. You know, despite it not really being much different from like the 80s, I think we kind of tend to romanticize the 80s and the 70s as well, as far as horror movies go. And obviously it's a period piece. So you don't have that 2000s stigma around it, I guess. And this movie is just so haunting. It's a really awesome atmospheric ghost story. Really utilizes light and shadow very well. It's woven into the plot in a way that kind of makes sense and is interesting and doing something a little differently than I've ever seen before. So as far as horror movies go, Criterion always really kills it. They have a really great curation process when it comes to horror films, and I was really happy to see that this one was being added a couple years back whenever it came out. So if you have not seen the others, this is a great way to own it. It's got some cool special features, interview with the director, kind of explaining the genesis of the idea of the others, and it has a really great twist. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to tell you anything else. If you don't know what it is, yeah. I almost hate the idea of even telling people that there's a twist, because then they go into a movie expecting perhaps something really life-changing at the end. But, you know, it's a cool twist. Definitely check out the others. It is a really good selection. Perhaps the saddest movie on the list, I got The Elephant Man from David Lynch. Now, back when David Lynch passed away earlier this year, you know, obviously a lot of people were talking about him, talking about his films, and I still had not seen The Elephant Man. So I watched this after the fact. Wow, what a great examination of just like what it means to be human and to be good to one another. Really emotional movie, just probably his most accessible, but like as far as, you know, the humanity of it, it's an easy sort of concept to be able to understand. You know, a lot of his movies are very surreal, very strange and off-kilter. This one is somehow still has some Lynch sensibilities to it, but it feels more like a universal kind of story. Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt are amazing, and yeah, this one made me feel things, which is one of the higher compliments I can give to a movie. If you kind of are able to stir something within me, emotions wise. There's a few movies on my shelf of Criterion over there that I could have pulled to kind of represent that slot, but I thought I'd throw it up to David Lynch here. So definitely check out The Elephant Man. Like I said, if you're trying to get into Lynch a little bit, but you're not really sure where to start, this one is a sort of easier entry to kind of get into. All right, next up on the list, we have Double Indemnity. Now, this is another one that I have done a prior video on a while back when I was trying to do this series on my channel called Sell It or Shelve It, which was basically where I would watch unwatched movies in my collection and decide if I wanted to keep it or get rid of it. I've kind of morphed and evolved that into future physical media videos, but you know, I'll link that one up here regardless. This is another example of an older movie from 1944, which is even older than some of the other stuff I've talked about. And it is a kind of a situation where you go into it and you're like, okay, well, you know, this is going to be older. And with that comes this expectation and sort of what you can expect. And this is a movie that kind of breaks the mold in a way where it is so enthralling. And that's a recurring word that I think that I like to throw around, but it's really something that I value a lot, especially in these older movies, because as I alluded to earlier, sometimes my millennial brain just has a hard time, you know, keeping pace. And you know, this pace of this film is really, really interesting. It's basically, there's this guy and he gets himself into a situation where he's trying to pull one over on people. I don't even know how much detail I should give you, but basically his plan sort of backfires and he's having to sort of outwit the people who are hunting him without them catching on to the fact that he's the one that they're hunting. Hopefully I explained that well, but basically it's just really interesting trying to see the ways in which he attempts to keep himself out of trouble. And it's such an interesting little film and really couldn't recommend it enough. It's very interesting. So I would definitely check out Double Indemnity if any of that sounds appealing to you. All right, and my last pick for my Criterion Collection recommendations is Chilly Scenes of Winter, directed by a woman named Joan Micklin Silver, and it stars John Hurd and Mary Beth Hurt. So a movie that I would actually compare this to is something like 500 Days of Summer. Perhaps a little bit more somber, but basically it's sort of an anti-romantic comedy where it's, you know, really unlike a lot of the things that were coming out around this time. The way that people treated this stuff, people wanted to see certain things, and it was all about sort of male wish fulfillment. And this is a movie that is kind of saying like, okay, maybe this guy actually thinks that this is something that it's really not, and he's sort of convinced himself that it's the opposite case. So I don't know. It's a really interesting, unique movie that kind of bounces between past and present. And, you know, the relationship in this movie is one that I think is just more true to life than the kinds of really saccharine, almost Hallmarky romantic comedies tend to be, where, you know, they always wind up together, and, you know, there's a list of beats that these things follow almost religiously. A formula, a structure that they all adhere to, and this kind of throws all that out the window. And it's a really, really cool movie, and it's one of my favorites. I love watching it around winter time, so I'll be due for a rewatch of this any day now. So yeah, definitely would recommend Chilly Scenes of Winter. If that sounds good to you, definitely check it out. All right, guys, so that's my 10 recommendations for some movies that you could check out during the Barnes & Noble Criterion Collection sale, 50% off. I think it doesn't end until like December, so you guys should have plenty of time from the time this video comes out to check out some of these if you're so inclined. All right, guys, so let me know in the comments, do you agree with some of my picks? Do you like the list? Are there some movies that you think that I should check out based on my recommendations? Let me know all that stuff. I'd love to talk about some Criterion with you guys. I'll probably be placing an order myself here before the sale is over. A small one. You know, I'm pretty selective nowadays, but I think I'll be able to find a couple titles that I'm interested in getting this November here. So yeah, guys, let me know what you think. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't. We talk about new movies, old movies, physical media, and horror in general. So with all that being said, guys, please take care and watch more movies.